welcome to I think, the fourth live stream that we're holding to celebrate TiddlyWiki's 20th anniversary. We say that the key date is the 20th of September, and that's when TiddlyWiki was first uploaded to a server. So that's when it first became possible for somebody to type tiddlywiki.com in a browser and for TiddlyWiki to come up. But of course, on that date, it was actually only me and my family that visited tiddlywiki.com. And it was over the following few days that it picked up an astonishing sort of, viral for 2003 popularity. Um, and the format of the live streams is a little bit of me talking, but I'm also hoping to welcome some guests to join us. And I'm also going to be picking up some questions and comments from the forum and from the chat here. I've been trying to hold the live streams at different times of day in the hope that that would accommodate our global community. And I'm happy to see people from Australia have managed to make it at two of the time zones that I chose. We've talked a lot about something called MWS in the last couple of sessions, which is the future of TiddlyWiki. It's packaged initially as a plugin that extends the way that TiddlyWiki works when it runs on the server. So that's distinct from the way that many people run TiddlyWiki, which is as a single HTML file that they open in their browser. In A lot of that has been present in TiddlyWiki for a long time. There's always in TiddlyWiki 5, there's always been this ability to run under Node.js and to be a server. But MWS really beefs up that capability. Laurie in the chat asks an excellent point. Could you at some point address the topic of how MWS will resolve conflicts between users? Um, that's an excellent question, and there's quite a few layers to the answer. Uh, in a way, the implementation layer that I'm most concerned with at the moment is um, treats is trying to make the store of MWS have clear and understandable semantics, and therefore to detect a conflict and to provide the tools to resolve it. But what we find with conflict resolution is that the best strategy on stack is so that I'm getting reports of freezing my net via a network cable. So I would have hoped to have been immune to internet weather, but who knows? So forgive me if the freezing had disrupted my talking, but I was addressing Laurie's question of how MWS will resolve conflicts between users. And so what we're talking about here is two users editing the same tiddler at the same time or almost the same time. Um, this, in the history of wikis, has been recognized as a social problem as much as anything else. Okay, we're getting freezes. I'm hoping that the recording might be better. Let's see. Let's see. But there doesn't appear to be anything obvious on my end I can do. I have everything closed that I'm not using. Maybe I should have stumped for a more powerful computer. But looking at my CPU usage, it's not hitting 100%. So uh, I don't think it's my computer. I fear it is the network. Um, so, uh, but those of you in the chat, I'd be very grateful if you could keep giving me feedback in the chat as to whether you're able to understand what we're talking about. So, I was starting to address Laurie's excellent question, which is based on the fact that MWS brings explicitly multi-user capabilities to TiddlyWiki. How do we resolve what happens in the possibility that two people try to edit the same thing at the same time? And so I was suggesting that at a low level, it is the responsibility of the system in that situation to act in a coherent way and to provide the tools that, if necessary, can be used to fix things. The what we try to do in terms of the user interface for a conflict is to push it as high up as possible because the history of wikis suggests that conflicts are kind of a social issue as much as anything else. So TiddlyWiki itself, one of the reasons, one of the motive, well, let's say one of the benefits of cutting information up into the smallest possible semantic units is that it reduces the likelihood of a conflict occurring. So, for instance, in a outlining system, rather than typing a tiddler with lots of bullet points, if we make each bullet point a separate tiddler, then a conflict will only arise if two people edit the same bullet point. So on almost any system where conflicts can happen, that slicing things down to small chunks so that the context of a conflict is as small as possible is a very common strategy for helping things. Um, I believe that the most important part of the answer at a low level is that MWS is going to have to at least have the option to retain a complete tiddler, a complete history of the changes to a tiddler. The reason for that is in the unlikely event that two people do make a change, or in the event that people make a change to the same tiddler, you want to be able to go back to the first person's modification that was overwritten in order to retrieve it so that you can perhaps merge it in with the change made by the user. So that's one part of it, is MWS does not yet retain a complete tiddler history, but does keep a revision count. And it's something I've been playing with during the development, and for quite a while now. I've been pretty sure in my mind that we are going to have to do this complete history retention business. It does have lots of implications. It means that obviously, if you've got a large tiddler that's being repeatedly edited, then something is going to fill up with old copies of it. But that kind of problem will always exist in MWS. We saw yesterday that all of the data for a server lives in a single SQLite file that grows to the size that is needed. So when it hits 200 megabytes and you want to know what's in it, we're going to need tools that say this bag is this kilobytes and this bag is this size. And I think just as we're used to running out of space in file systems, this phenomenon of a TiddlyWiki that can store very large amounts of data will mean that people will store very large amounts of data, and in all probability, will need to figure out ways to delete it when they don't need it. So this is still all addressing Laurie's question. Please do keep the further questions running, and I hope this is a useful way of answering. And of course, please do fire in with any questions and suggestions. Um, so, what I'm to answer Laurie's question about conflicts, we try and reduce the likelihood of conflicts by cutting data up into small chunks. When they do occur, we have a full revision history so that we can go back to an earlier overwritten version. As to the user experience, the web itself, so the APIs that underpin the web, um, concerned with this problem. And so, in a very web oriented way, what we can do is if I make a change to a tiddler, when it hits the server, at that point, we know if the tiddler has been modified on the server by another user. And so at that point, it becomes possible to raise an error to the user and say, Oi, Jim has modified this. What do you want to do about it? And in that situation, we can bring in the copy that Jim modified and present it so that the user can accept the changes within it. So that's it's lots of systems work like this. I think it's not a great user experience. When I press save, that often means, oh, I'm finished, I've got to go. And so pressing save and then getting a dialogue that says, actually, Jim's modified this. Do you want to do something about it? That actually feels a bit backwards. I feel I might want also to see a banner as soon as Jim's changed it that says somebody else is modifying this tiddler. And that's perfectly possible to do. So a weird thing about the way multi-wiki server works is that for the tiddlers that are shared, you can kind of ignore all the synchronization magic, and you can just think of all of those tiddlers in those different places being kind of connected, being the same thing. And you don't really need to worry about how a tiddler got to a particular place. So let me just scroll up the chat. Laurie follows up with if there's a particular tiddler in a plugin bag and it's edited by the plugin administrator, but some user already has this same tiddler with its own adaptations in its private bag. Okay, so that's uh, the way I'm going to interpret this, Laurie, may not be exactly how you meant the question, in which case, please do clarify. But my answer, I think, will give you vocabulary that might help you express what's happening. So the idea is that there's a bag of general components that an administrator is maintaining, contains a bunch of plugins that are useful to people, and then a number of other people have that bag included in their wikis so that they, with a single choice, can get this whole bundle of useful stuff folded into their wiki. And then Laurie's question is asking about what happens when a user has included that bag and then they modify one of those tiddlers with their own adaptations. And that's where something that we call the recipe cascade comes in. We saw yesterday, and I'll show you again in a moment, how MWS presents a wiki, creates a wiki from a list of bags that we call a recipe. And the cascade part is that to build the tiddlers for a particular wiki, we take the tiddlers from the bottom bag and then we overlay over that the tiddlers from the next bag up and then the next bag up so that tiddlers in a higher bag can overwrite those in a lower bag. So if I'm in a wiki that has a recipe that includes this general components bag, and I modify one of those tiddlers, I've made a copy of that tiddler in my own bag. So that isn't always going to be what people want, and so it's important to be able to customize the behavior, the things users do that can make that happen. But the reason for working like that is because we want this separation between users. We don't want somebody who's using this general components plugin, sorry, general components bag, to have any way at all of affecting the wikis of other people who happen to be using that bag. Only the people with the rights to modify that general components bag should be able to do that. So that means if a tiddler that I've overwritten later gets modified in the bag that's lower in the recipe, I will not see those changes. So in other systems that have used bags and recipes, because as we've explained yesterday, MWS is, uh, I think, the third or fourth implementation of bags and recipes. There has been interest in providing ways to see which of my students have overridden tiddlers from the bags that I gave them, that kind of thing. And to do that will require the ability for users to be able to write queries across all the bags that they can access. And I can see a path for offering that kind of thing. Um, so, Laurie, I hope that that was a good answer to your question. Mary, Tones is saying, I understand the layered approach of MWS is in a way hierarchical. Can it be used in a network structure? For example, a bag shared between users, or a bag each the other can see but not the others. Okay, so I do not think of MWS as being hierarchical. There are no components of MWS that contain other components, including itself. So there's nothing like folders or anything like that. Everything, all the structures in MWS are flat. So I think the dimension in which you're thinking about it being hierarchical or it being a network structure is perhaps that using the simple components that MWS provides, one can build hierarchical things and one can build networky things. I think that may be, I'm there are two ways of looking at any tool. There's this sort of inside the tool way of looking at things, where the coordinate system is relative to the center of the tool. And then there's the user's way, which is more outside, where the coordinate system is centered on the user. And so here, I think Tones is rightly focusing on that user perspective, where these terms like hierarchical and network are entirely appropriate. It's only that the implementation is a little bit simpler than that. But I think that reflects how TiddlyWiki itself works. Provides a very simple structure, but using that fixed structure of a tiddler identified by its title with a list of fields, you can build a whole range of structures. You can build a spreadsheet, you can build a graph, you can build a 3D game. So what I think we're seeing here is the same thing with MWS. Small number of very simple components with rules about how they work. Once you grasp those components, they can be combined in order to compose and combine your data. Um, so I hope that's helpful, James. I have talked about this before without wishing to embarrass anybody. One of the things that I really love about the community is people share, but they're not just sharing things they built, they share their experiences. And one of the things that I'm really is a great privilege for me is I get to see other people learning TiddlyWiki. And Tones, if you don't mind me saying this, is a great example because Tones will engage in dialogue with me and other users on the forum in order to shape his understanding of a new feature. So it feels to me as though that's a much more sort of public external process that we don't always see, but it's really interesting to me because it is really about that sort of those two dimensions that I mentioned before. how the way that one perceives an entity like MWS is very different according to whether you're standing looking on either of those two planes. Um, uh, Great comment from Peter, who says that the overlaying system, by which he means the way that we build up a pile of tiddlers by progressively taking them from this list of bags. Peter says that that sounds similar to the shadow mechanism in TiddlyWiki today, but multi-layered rather than just the original shadow tiddler and mine. And that is correct as well. Yes, absolutely. And a tension in the internal design of MWS um, is kind of I never like having two implementations of the same thing. So there is a bit of tension that we already have this implementation of shadow tiddlers, and now MWS implements a very similar mechanism. But yeah, we have to work like that. Tone's saying the layers are somewhat hierarchical. My bag overrides those given to me as a user. Could I edit a bag that flows down to others? If you've got access rights to a bag, you can edit the contents of that bag, and other users that are including that bag in their recipes will see your changes. So the layers are not strictly hierarchical because a hierarchy requires either via containment or links a parent-child relationship, and bags do not have parents. They may be in one or more recipes, but they don't have a parent. And neither do bags have children, other bags that are children. And the same holds for recipes. Recipes do not contain other recipes. So that's the sense in which I'm talking about the implementation layer of MWS not being strictly hierarchical. But Tones is absolutely right with that. The experience as a user is that my bag, my stuff overrides the stuff that you give me, and that feels like what it's like to be within a hierarchy. Um, the question about turns goes on to a question about could I edit a bag that flows down to others? The idea and something that we're working on at the moment is that bags should have what are called access control lists, which is a computer sciencey term for a set of rules about who is allowed to access it. And so the plan is that um, recipes and bags, but um, will have security tokens attached to them. So I might be able to read one bag, but somebody else can both read and write it. Matt asks, if I delete a tiddler that overrides an earlier bag, does the underlying tiddler reappear? That's an area where the current behavior isn't quite as I would like it to be, but essentially it does. But you might need to do a refresh at the moment. Um, there's a great comment saying, I believe these layers, by which we should perhaps call them bags, but bags that allow you to layer your content are for business usage because seems no such usage in daily personal wiki. Well, it remains to be seen. I use TiddlyWiki every day myself, and the way that I use TiddlyWiki is that I have three primary single file TiddlyWikis that I edit in Tiddly Desktop and Quine, and I store on Dropbox so that they're available everywhere, and so that I can share them with people. So, what I would like for me. Is at the very least to have a shared bag for the common components that I like to use in all three of these wikis. So notes, recipes, and songs, guitar chords. I've got a wiki full of those with some sheet music in it as well. And there's just some bits and pieces, customizations. that I like that work with the screen sizes that I use those wikis on. So I would absolutely, for me, MWS, my core activities would be for at least four bags. But I also find experimentation or the desire to experiment can often drive doing more. So imagine I've got a bag with my personal notes in. Now imagine I suddenly go, what would it be like if I'll try and think of something that's not stupid. What would it be like if I went through and recalibrated all of my tags in the following way? So what I want to do is go in and do a whole load of dragging and dropping. I'll have things reorganized, and I think that might be better. And what you would do on MWS is to create a new recipe that includes your personal notes, but above that, a new bag for your experimental modifications. Then, when you visit that wiki, you're going to see your personal notes, but any changes you make will go to this experiment bag. You can compare the two things side by side. And if you change the underlying wiki, the other one will change too. Um, so I think that can be quite a handy. It's essentially the same as with single file TiddlyWiki. If I want to try out a destructive experiment, I take a copy of the HTML file, make all my changes. If it doesn't work, I throw it away. But in MWS, this is a server, so that modified copy is a URL that I can give to somebody else and say, "Oh, do you think this is better than this?" Pointing at the two URLs. Um, I, I also at the moment there's slightly I should screen share I guess, but there's a slightly experimental um, way in which we there we go. I showed yesterday that in MWS, there is a command, so it's not something that is done automatically, but there is a command to take each plugin in the core plugin library and make it into its own bag. So those are the language plugins, those are the plugins themselves, and then right at the bottom there's a few themes. And so if we look at this bag. So this is a bag with the name of the plugin, and it contains a single tiddler, which is the plugin, which is just a bunch of JSON, just as plugins have always been. So there is what I'm saying there. This is all in response to a user saying, are bags going to be useful to me? Bags are also kind of part of the system and part of the way that the system implements the plumbing that it needs for all of this to hang together and work. So you will be using bags even if you're only working on a single wiki. Um, Laurie says, would it be possible to make MWS offline by default in a similar way to the way Tiddly PWA operates? Yes, I mean, in principle, just that. And Val Packett, who's created Tiddly PWA, has done a stunning job of making an extremely usable experience of using TiddlyWiki as a PWA. And I would hope that Val would be able to adapt that work to MWS. But at the moment, there's very much a kind of core set of functionality within MWS that is my main concern. Um, Another comment from a user who says that they uh, use a feature called file system paths, which is a sort of rather hacky way that TiddlyWiki has featured TiddlyWiki has always offered, which allows you, if with a bit of cunning and care, to get a lot of this functionality of composing tiddlers from different sources. And Anthony says, sorry, Tones, brief comment says, Draft bags. Wow, draft bags. That's an excellent point, James. Something that isn't in there at the moment, but what I believe to be necessary. Well, let me show you in the context of we'll talk about this in the context of a demo. So, yesterday I showed you MWS where I'd run some commands so that it was populated with some dummy data. Here I'm starting with a completely blank MWS. So the first thing I'll do is to create a bag called demo. And now it's in my list of bags. And then I will create a recipe called demo as well. And the list of bags in the recipe will just be the demo bag. Okay, so now I've got a wiki called demo that is made up of the single bag, also called demo. Possibly confusing to use the same name for both, but it'll be me that's punished in a way if that does turn out to be confusing. So here's my new wiki, and I can create a tiddler. And I think once again, the occasion calls for um, a demonstration of my drawing skills, and that change has immediately gone to the server. If I come here and look at the contents of the demo bag, you can now see that there's a tiddler called Hello There, and if I click on it, I get the image. And so this is something we talked about yesterday, how what MWS does is lock all your stuff up in a database. But the benefit you get for your stuff being in a database is is the ability to write you and share URLs that point to specific bits of the data. So yeah, if you were building a solution that involved shuffling PDFs, you might end up with a URL that points to a PDF that you send to your lawyer, and they never need to know that it's TiddlyWiki. They just see a PDF. So uh, here's the challenge, though, is that right now, let's create. Sorry, there's that bag. So here we are back at the dashboard. Now let's create another bag and another wiki as if there was another user. So I shouldn't have used the word demo. I'll start using animal names. So we'll make a bag called Badger, and we'll make a recipe called Badger, which contains both bags. Okay. So now we'll open both Badger and demo. And here in demo, in recent changes, we can see my beautiful artwork. And of course, because the wiki Badger also includes the bag demo, we're also seeing the image here. Okay, so now let's go back to that demo bag and we're going to start writing something. So this is my personal thoughts. And let's say, um, oh, uh, I think we should do this. And then I go off to my notes or something and I do a copy. And let's say I do a paste, and what comes out is something private. And then I get a phone call. So the current situation is I haven't pressed done. I'm in the middle of editing a tiddler. I pasted some private information into it and I didn't notice because I got a phone call. But let's go back to see what the person using the Badger wiki sees. I'm going to short circuit things by getting the changes from the server. And you can see that the draft shows up here. So now suddenly this other people who are accessing the same information via Badger, it seems a little bit inappropriate that they're seeing the draft. So indeed, if this person, if in Badger, if I press done, then I'll create a copy of the tiddler in my bag Badger. So now that if I look there, that's in bag Badger. back here, that doesn't affect my draft that was in the bag demo. Um, uh, oh, yes, no, of course it does. It's gone because I don't get to see. So that means that my draft to me has disappeared because the process of pressing done in here deleted the draft that was in the demo bag. So uh, if you can follow that, it's the kind of can lots of us, it's really easy when you've used single file TiddlyWiki to imagine a multi-user TiddlyWiki where you and me are on the same TiddlyWiki, you edit a Tiddler, and wow, it pops up for me. But the way that drafts get shared, is I think, problematic. It doesn't match people's expectations. And so I believe that the solution to this is that every user should have a special bag that you don't need to do anything to create, that is used to contain their drafts. So, what that would mean is it's as if every recipe that I visit would have a zero flaw, a recipe, a bag that's automatically at the top, which is this draft bag. And modifications to drafts would go into the draft bag, and when I press done, the final tiddler would be created in the actual top bag of the recipe. So I hope that makes sense. It would have some interesting benefits. It would mean that there would be a place that I could go where I could see all of my drafts. So something that we find happens very often with server-based TiddlyWikis is that phone call thing. If I'm in the middle of typing this stuff, I get a phone call. Let's copy that address, then I'll close the browser tab because I got on a train. And now later, when I go back there, um, my draft's there. So yippee, I can carry on with it. But it also means that in a server-based system, you're much more likely to end up with a bunch of drafts that were interrupted and you forgot to deal with. So being able to see all of those drafts in one place also seems quite useful. I'm just going to go back to the chat. And I should stop to say, welcome to everybody. Thank you very much for joining me. Really appreciate you giving up your time. Questions that we're getting are being great and very useful. I will um, uh, just wanted to, okay. Uh, one of our users confesses having an ulcer, and so won't be able to speak clearly on the video chat. But I'd just like to say that please give a virtual thumbs up if you're ready to join the video chat. And joining the video chat, which means you need to have headphones. Um, uh, Lin 1 and 2 is agreeing that drafts should be private. Yes, I think it just fits users' expectations. In a Gmail, for instance. Um, Lin 1 and 2 asks, how do you assign a tiddler to a bag in a wiki? So at the moment, I uh, the let's have a look. Let's close these and just see what we've got in each bag, and I'll just show you the options. So we've got a bag called Badger and a bag called Demo. Bag called Badger has a tiddler called My Personal Thoughts. Bag called Demo has a tiddler called Another Draft and a tiddler called Hello There. Okay, and now let's imagine that we wanted to move one of those tiddlers, we want to move another draft from demo to Badger. Now, in fact, that one is quite easy because all it would, if I go to the Badger wiki and edit it, then I will have created a copy within the Badger bag. So let's do that. I'll go in here. I've got all three tiddlers, and we'll see where they come from. Is that's in bag demo. My personal thoughts, I think, is in bag badger, and another draft is in bag demo. And so if I edit, and I'm in bag, so if I edit another draft to say now I am in the bag badger, um, now. Look at that, it's in the bag badger. And if we go to demo and refresh, uh, it goes to back, so we can see it now in bag badger, and that's the version that's got I am in bag badger. And the version that is in bag demo is still there, of course, but with the old content. And so at that point, I could delete one copy. Um, I can also drag and drop between wikis. So right now, those are all standard TiddlyWiki user features that people can use in MWS. So it's very easy for end users to move a large number of tiddlers around just using normal drag and drop. But that what I think Lim 1 Lim 2 is asking about uh, is here, for instance, is it possible to get a drop down and be able to move this tiddler to any bag I have access to? And I do think that feature is important. It's we never in TiddlyWeb we always said those kinds of operations wouldn't be would just be done by um, doing the underlying primitive operations directly on the server one by one. So the server wouldn't know about something like an operation to move a tiddler between bags. It would just know read tiddler, write tiddler, delete tiddler, which would be the three operations necessary to move a tiddler. Now, I think that has to change for MWS because I want it to be able to cope with video files that are multiple gigabytes. So it's not going to be the way to move that between bags is not going to be to download it and upload it again. So there will be an API. Tony says, could a draft stay within local storage? It could. And well, as you know, there's plugins that there is a plugin that lets you do that, and you could probably make it work with MWS, but it's not a focus. I mean, don't forget that MWS is trying to be a normal server application that meets the expectations that users have from using Facebook or Gmail. So with Gmail, my drafts living within Gmail so that I can access them from any computer. It's pretty important. And so MWS is very unlikely to be a focus to be storing data in local storage because it's another point of vulnerability. The design of MWS depends upon getting the so we might retain data that hasn't been synced to the server in local storage, which perhaps that's what you meant, Tones. But the way you phrased it is, could a draft stay within local storage? No, we might use local storage as a cache for changes that have been made and we've lost connections to the server and so haven't been able to save those changes. But say that's a bit different than drafts. That means that any change while it's pending might, does not at the moment, but might in the future go into local storage. But I mean, that's to protect against a pretty remote possibility, really, which is there being lots of pending data when you close a window. And when you use any tool like TiddlyWiki, when you put data in it, you really want to be able to check that the data's there and is safe. And so your usage patterns are often based around that. Getting this, I can see those files in my file system. I can see that data at this URL, and I can click this button to save it. That kind of giving people confidence through being able to interact with concrete artifacts that represent their material. Um, okay, I then one, then two. So should moving a Tiddler to a bag in a wiki be like tagging it? Um, kind of, yeah. I mean, at the moment, a restriction that that we have is that all changes go to the topmost bag in the Tiddler. Sorry, topmost bag in the recipe. And experience has taught us that changes going to different places can be conceptually very confusing for end users. I've got two tiddlers here, edit this one, and it's only visible to these people. I edit this one, it's visible to all these people. How did that happen? That's asking a lot of users to be able to track not just what browser window they're in and what they're looking at, but what the different behavior of the specific tiddlers that they interact with. So I believe that that simplification is in the interests of end users. I also recognize that we need to be able to move tiddlers between bags, etc. Um, but I think the say there's this is we're talking about quite there's a low level of MWS, how the store works and how it maintains coherence. This stuff is quite quite a bit higher level. So one could build an interface in which all of the tiddlers coming from any bag in the recipe were directly editable, and in some sense, MWS will support that. Um, but as I say, a major factor shaping this design is 15 years experience of other people using it who are not experts. So I a good opportunity to show the Anna Freud manuals, which is as I help with. It's run by just very quickly visit Anna Freud is a charity that does training for social workers and psychiatrists, psychologists who work with children and young people. And some of the most troubled families in Britain, the people who work with them are trained by Anna Freud. And their big insight was that if you send out, and I'm paraphrasing some people with much greater expertise in this field than me, but their idea is that uh, if you want to improve the outcomes in those kinds of situations, then and those kinds of situations is a social worker visiting a family that with a young person in difficulties. Um, what you want is, from the point of view of training, is you want to be able to tell people what the best thing for them to do in that situation. You know, what interventions can I make? And so their idea was to build a manual that allows that captures what the industry might call best practice. And the manual that they built is based around a particular technique called ambit, which is illustrated here, and you'll get the general idea. It's a way of looking at your work in that sort of context, so that you can talk about it. And the idea of the manual is to summarize the training and provide detailed information when you need it on the principles and practice that Anna Freud teach through this mechanism. So that's lovely. It's a great piece of hypertext authoring with a lot of different authors working on the material. But what they found is that if you just go to a office of social workers in a random place in the country and say, "Here you go, here's your manual," um, that there is a number of obstacles. So, for instance, if the manual, um, if that team perceives that the manual contains material that doesn't apply to them, and so, for instance, it's got a whole load of material about beaches, but they are inland, so it's material that's geographically irrelevant. The more of that material, the more irrelevant stuff they find in the manual, the more likely they are to reject it. So what Anna Freud have done is evolved this idea of making custom adaptations of the manuals. So you can see mostly in the UK, but all over Europe, there are adaptations of the manual that have been made for specific offices. So I'll open one at random, and here you'll see it's basically the original Ambit content that you saw before. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Here we go. It's the original Ambit content that you saw before, but with local edits that obviously in this case are in Spanish by the users of that manual. So um, this the Anna Freud manuals are pretty quite interesting, thrilling application of TiddlyWiki because there are many thousands of people, users with write access. And those people are not focused on TiddlyWiki. Obviously, they're focused on training for a very demanding job, and and so this system is based on bags and recipes. So behind the scenes, there's a admin screen where you can see all of that stuff. But which I could show you. Uh, so this system, I mentioned how MWS is only the latest system to use this bag and recipe mechanism. This is an architecture called ZMMX, which I implemented a few years ago using AWS serverless technology. It's a very, very, very simple system, but it provides bags and recipes. So that's a particular Ambit manual. Um, More useful to look at the recipes and and the individual bags, and this also has security. So the reason why was showing you that was that the questions here, the question here about moving between bags, moving tiddlers between bags. Um, One of the challenges that we face with something like MWS is that those of us coming from a computing background, um, we love a certain type of complexity. And that working with complexity is a great challenge for people who don't work in that field. And so here with Ambit, what I've been very privileged to be able to see is what it's like for ordinary people who don't care about TiddlyWiki when they're forced to use TiddlyWiki. So as part of their job, you will use TiddlyWiki to do this. Only that obviously they don't just discuss it as TiddlyWiki. And so that's really interesting to me. I'm mostly focused on hearing from users, enthusiasts for TiddlyWiki who have, really helpful, clear ideas for things they'd like to change and improve. But these users it's not quite like that because they don't have a choice, and they, as part of their job, have to use much what they tell me they have to use much worse, more unfriendly software that is much more difficult to use. And so when faced with, they have to get training on how drafts work, where you have to press the tick button when you finish doing an edit, and that's all fine. The challenge is actually to get them to write hypertextually. It's the old challenge that we we collectively have this kind of image of writing in TiddlyWiki as being blocks of text that are interlinked so that I can follow my own path of interest, reading the material that's relevant to me. Um, and and writing in that form is hard. We say in TiddlyWiki, make your tiddlers be as small as possible because they're easier to reuse. But actually, the thinking process of how do I cut this up into tiddlers? What are logical to be individual tiddlers? All of that it requires thought and, in some cases, experience to make good judgments about it. But everything is a tiddler. I click on one of these things, and I get the associated tiddler. Uh, and a fantastic diagram. That's great. Um, so let's come back um, to our own wiki. And we got a couple of thumbs up for joining the stream. Matt, would you like to? Oh, Matt, you're there. Perfect. So now, forgive me, I'm going to welcome Matt. Well, I'll let you introduce yourself. So let me just switch over to the video chat. Here we go. And uh, Eric and Matt. Welcome. Very pleased that you could join me on this live stream. Do try talking so that I can verify that we're getting audio.
One, two,
I'm
three. One, two,
talking.
three.
Excellent.
Did
I
you hear anything?
believe we
Oh,
can hear you loud and clear. Just make sure that Matt, it looks like you might not be using headphones. Do you have headphones?
uh, not any professional things, but
Oh
this
no,
is what
that's
I
fine.
have.
That's fine.
Uh,
That's all it requires. I just couldn't quite see them. Forgive me. Well, it's great to see you, Matt. Let's start with you. I feel like we might have done this before, but would you like to introduce yourself to everybody here and explain,
sure.
particularly, I guess it'd be interesting to hear how you discovered TiddlyWiki and how it's progressed for you over the nearly 20 years that you have been with Eric and I on this journey. And just give us a couple of minutes, and I might interrupt in order to keep things moving, but I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure, sure. Although you did ask a difficult question, how did I find TiddlyWiki? I don't know. That was yeah. So it was back, if not 2006, then it was 2007 because that's when I started participating in the then forum, the Google group. But how I actually found TiddlyWiki, I don't know. But I do know that one thing that hooked me on it was this little animation that when you click the link in the sidebar, you got this little animation that kind of whoop, zoomed out, so you saw the tiddler, and it was very interesting because it seemed that the system somehow knew before I knew what I was clicking on. The system seemed to know it somehow. So that was yeah, small detail there. Yeah. So
I'm
since
just gonna
2006,
since you mentioned it, Matt, and forgive me, but it's interesting for people to see stuff.
yeah, sort of, yeah.
This is the very first version of the animation that Matt's talking about, and for a long time, it was a part of TiddlyWiki that was very important to me. So I think this version has, yeah, a slightly improved one, and. I did it like this because I felt the way that with Ajax applications, as they were called at the time, the page spontaneously changing was potentially disorientating. So I wanted to give visual cues, forgive me, to help people through that. And just before we close on that, I think, yeah, so TiddlyWiki Classic still has a variant of that animation. I'd love to hear people's thoughts. Maybe it's something we should bring to, maybe it is something we should bring to the Wiki 5. But Matt, I'm so sorry. You said something so interesting that I couldn't but
Okay.
join you in
No, no,
enjoying that
that
memory.
is, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, one practical question: do I dare have the YouTube on also? Because I can't through this other software, whatever it's called, I can't see when you screen share anything. So, is it possible, or would that
If
ruin everything?
it'll consume a lot of your bandwidth, so it is not
Okay,
recommended for
okay, so
that
better not.
purpose, for that reason. But no,
No,
you're quite
no.
right. I should, for your benefit, I should speak what I'm doing so that. But yes, it's
Okay,
um,
great.
in a world of infinite bandwidth, it should be fine. So
Yeah,
feel
yeah,
free to try, but definitely mute it. And the other thing you'll find is that the YouTube stream has a lag because it's adding auto-generated subtitles and, filling up the
okay.
tubes that make the internet work.
Okay, okay. By the way, for the people in the chat, in the YouTube chat, um, if there was a lag, that might mean that you're getting the YouTube chat live, but what you're seeing is delayed by a few seconds. So you have to like pull the small indicator, the video indicator, to the very right side. Just saying.
Yes,
So
indeed.
back to history. Yeah, so I discovered TiddlyWiki. I got hooked by it, and it's been a fantastic journey ever since. And I guess, well, actually, the two main guys are sitting right there. I'm looking at you guys. So thank you so much, the two of you, for this incredible journey. I have yes, I started using it, and then after just a few years later, maybe 5 years later, I started experimenting to actually create stuff in the form of plugins. And so ever since then, I'm building stuff with it as the need arises, or as my curiosity arises, if I can build something with
The
it.
first
So I'm
email I have from you, Matt, is I'm not sure which date format it's in, January 2008, when you jumped into the forum.
Okay, okay. The what was it called? AMZG
That's
username, I think.
exactly that. Yeah,
Is that
that's exactly it.
okay? Okay,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. Perhaps 2008. I think it was okay. Anyway,
but no, you
um,
must you must have it must have taken quite a while to be. I mean, that was to ask a detailed question about importing tiddlers, so you must have been using it for a while by then. And of course, we've met at least
yeah,
twice, if not four times. We
yeah,
have
yeah. Something like
to explain. We have in the past run TiddlyWiki meetups. We did one. Eric and I did one also. I think in 2000 and was it six or eight? 2008 in San Francisco. Matt, I think you came to the one that we did in Oxford, didn't you?
right, right, right.
Yeah. That
Was
was
that
in
only one, or was it?
2017.
Has there only been one Oxford meeting, or
I think
two,
we did
or am I
two
getting it
actually.
mixed?
I did a couple of events that were more like designed to be live events in Oxford. And then we had a kind of multi-day TiddlyWiki meetup in 2017. I am trying to compile all this historical material into a coherent timeline. Because
Right.
one thing, I've been looking through old emails and folders full of files and stuff and finding crazy stuff. So I oh, I just realized, of course, I can't talk to you about it because I'd be screen sharing. But all these old sketches and prototypes and so on, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. And of course,
Yeah,
in
right.
many cases, there'll be things I worked on, put significant effort into. So Matt, you've also made the transition from single file TiddlyWiki Classic to being one of the most prodigious users of Tiddly Space, which was a Tiddly Web
Oh,
instance.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Um,
Tilly
and
Space was incredible. Yeah.
and you went on to TiddlyWiki
Yeah.
5 as well. So you've gone on all of the journeys with it.
Yeah, yeah, at least those that you mentioned. I have no, TiddlyWiki on Node. I've only just tried it a few times and found that it was much simpler with a single file
Yeah.
wiki. But yeah, yeah, I use Tiddly Space, and that's one reason why it's so exciting now that you explained to us about the newer TiddlyWiki server things. Because Tilly Space was a fantastic actually, and it made it possible to like reuse things, and I could build stuff. And my kids that were really small at that time, they I could set up wikis for them. So they had Ella, whom you've met actually in
Yes, indeed.
in London. She had her own hamster wiki, and so yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Well,
But
I
yeah,
hope
so
now
I
there's.
transitioned.
Oh, go on, so sorry.
No, no, no. For the just for from TiddlyWiki Classic to TiddlyWiki 5, I made the transition as not early on. Actually, I've discovered that I'm a bit of a late adopter in things. Uh, I, I, I just when I thought I had a good grasp of TiddlyWiki Classic, and then Jeremy comes with something really cool and new, but I don't understand it. But after a while, I had to go there, and I'm really happy I did. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Well, it's a topic that has come up a bit. I and I'm very interested in is I was talking about tones, watching tones learn these new features, and how, and I guess same would apply to you that it's you get that understanding through dialogue in the community. That dialogue is useful to you, shapes your understanding, but is also great for observers who get to watch a sort of like a Socratic dialogue between it's actually a really useful way for other people to learn. But it's a great challenge, there's plenty of people for whom TiddlyWiki as it existed in 2006 is just fine, meets all their use cases. And so at one extreme there is a kind of uh, one end of the spectrum of a TiddlyWiki sort of perspective of TiddlyWiki users, which is please don't change anything else. Stop making it more complicated. And of course, we have reasoned, detailed answers for why we're making it more capable, and all of those is basically rooted in a desire to give users this unprecedented degree of control to customize the whole experience. And So yes, we keep generating more complexity. You're a great example of kind of your experience is what helps us to keep it grounded, I think. I mean, I've shown with MWS how there's there's a weird sort of gulf that there's one command which I showed yesterday to start MWS bang application is there, and using it, just click on a link and you get to your wiki and you can edit it. And it's in one sense couldn't be easier, but of course there's all this new concepts have to be learned, bags and recipes and so on. It is asking a lot of people, but it should be easy for you because you've had 15 more years experience of that stuff. Um,
Right, right.
Matt, the most popular thing for people to do on the video chat is to share their own wiki. Are you able to do that?
Yes, if I am technically, how do I do it?
Well,
How do I
depending on
screen
your
share with this thing?
browser, and I should have made the note that it works best in Chrome, apparently. But depending on your
Mhm.
browser, there should be a
Chrome
screen
Brave
share
browser.
button.
That's what I'm using.
Or open the
There is.
browser.
Okay, there.
If you take the link that you used to join, put it in a new browser tab, and you'll need the password again. And then choose to share your
Are you getting
screen.
anything here?
Let's see. It'll. Oh yeah, great. You're through. You have
Am I
mastered
not doing
it.
that already now?
No, now we can see your screen. That's terrific, Matt. Great.
Oh, excellent. So you see like a control panel tiller.
Yep, we see
Are you
control
seeing that?
panel. Um, Excellent. Oh well, Matt,
Great,
thank
great,
you. I
great.
think say they're very, very good for people. People in the chat, do please fire your questions for Matt. And Matt, don't worry about the questions. I will pick up any questions that are relevant and post them across to you.
Great,
So
great, great.
tell us what we're seeing here, and where this wiki
Yeah.
lives.
So my plan was to show you things that I use a lot because I want this to be as
Hmm.
useful for people. So I went through my various plugins and also other people's plugins and consider like, okay, is this something that I use every day or almost every day? Like, is this an essential tool for me? And so I found a few things. This is my standard setup from which I start other projects. If I am to produce a plugin or something, I just use this as a base. It already has a lot of stuff installed into it, and so I use that as a base, and then I might remove stuff from it. But the reason why I'm bringing it out now is not that other people will use this. It's a private wiki on TiddlyHost, by the way, which I use all the time. Um, but this particular wiki is not what is interesting. It's just so that I can access a few plugins. So my first plugin that I use all the time, and those of you who have been following along for a few years might know this already. It's the side editor.
Oh, I
It's an
remember that.
editor.
Yes.
It's an editor. Yeah, yeah. So I access it by, for example, clicking this special new tiddler button, and what I get. Oh, there's some lag here. Is that because of the computer or because of the? Okay. So what I get here is the new tiddler. There's nothing in it, but here on the side is an empty little editor that I type in the title, my title. I can add some tags, some tag. Perhaps I should make it a single tag, and then some text like this. And if I click here, I get the tiddler. And if I want to edit this, I can, instead of going to this new tiddler button, I edit it via this tool here, and I get back this little floating side editor that I can, by the way, move to where I want it to be, and yeah, just edit the text. So this was actually originally created before we started having the built-in preview tool in the editor, the thing you get when you click here and click on the closed eye here. So I guess it's a bit of a variant of this, I guess. So that is a tool that I use all the time. I have no idea how you other guys do without it. Honestly, like how do you edit things? My first question, I guess, goes to you, Jeremy. How do you edit things? Do
Um,
you edit all the time inside the editor by clicking and going into the editor and
Mostly, yes, I do. I'm just opening. I've got everything closed on account of performance, but I'm just risking opening my wiki. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I have a poor man's side editor. Uh, um, uh, and and the reason why it's poor man's is because I have to edit the sidebar um, tiddler in order to change which tiddler I'm editing. So the workflow for me is that the time when I want, and I display it as an actual sidebar tab. Um, uh, and the workflow for me is when I want that sort of, I'm feeling like it's a shelf where I'm copying and pasting to and from lots of other tiddlers. So it's when I'm doing some kind of consolidation or review tasks, I find that very useful. And in a way, I should show my customization, but my wiki isn't quite ready for prime time. But um, I really like the way we're quite focused as a community, rightly, on building extensible, reusable components that we can share with other people. And when we do so, we add lots of features. And Eric, I'm not sure if you're still with us, but Eric is a great exemplar of that. His
I am still here.
Oh,
I'm
great,
just
Eric.
muted.
Sorry.
I'm
Um,
just reducing bandwidth.
Oh,
That's
very
all.
sensible, very sensible. Eric, the stuff that he produces is very rich. It's characterized by lots of options you can click on, and configurability is runs through Eric's stuff like a river. But as an individual end user, to make that editor is just creating a tiddler with the sidebar tag and an edit widget in it. So I kind of love that um, I can avail myself of a component which allows configurability and has a user interface, but there's this brutal lower level where you just create tiddlers to customize the user interface. And I say, particularly to put something in the sidebar by adding tag sidebar to it, is nice and simple. Okay, so that's great. Is your sidebar editor a plugin that you've published that somebody else has published? How does it?
I've published it. Let's see, though. I think it might be on Tiddly Spot. I should. I've updated it a little, and it.
Okay,
Let's see. I don't
so
know. Can you see
it's
now
in
that
the
I
control.
opened a new tab in my
No,
browser?
we're
Can you
stuck on the
see?
old one, but you can show us in the tab that you were on. If you scroll down, you can show us where the plugin is. Um, we're just seeing the top of the control panel plugins listing.
You mean in the control panel?
Yeah, in control panel, you can show us which
Oh, okay.
plugins are
Okay,
installed
sure. Yeah. So it's here.
on the wiki. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Sure. Sure.
And
Sure.
so
So
flick
this.
to the README. That's a bit
Yeah.
interesting. Okay. So
So
that's Twaddle. And Twaddle, for those that don't know, is Matt's publisher name, we call it. So the name, the unique string that identifies Matt's stuff and um, nicely represents TiddlyWiki's sense of humor as well. Um, so what else is in there besides the side editor? Oh, show us the settings panel for the side editor. I'd be
yeah.
interested in
So
that.
there is also the settings panel. Oh, for this. Okay. Sure. So the settings. Yeah. So this just flicks the if you see up there in the Tiddler's toolbar, the control panel. When I click this button, it's just shows and hides the this button. The reason why I want that is because when I publish other plugins and make public things, then I don't want people to see the toggle for the side editor. And the same thing goes for this. If you see in the sidebar now, I'm toggling the create new button.
Okay,
Does that make
and
sense?
that does. That's
Can you
really
see?
beautiful. I. yeah, again, I keep saying this to the other guests, but the guests are all people with lots of experience with TiddlyWiki. But you're really exemplifying what we're going for. Matt, I know that Matt isn't a software developer, doesn't consider himself a software developer, but he has made a piece of software, which you see here. And it, like all software, embodies a thought process about what Matt and other users would want. And shows the patterner of experience by having configuration to reflect real world usage. So I really love that. I love that, the sharing of material within the community is such a key part of open source, but lowering the barriers to creation so that Matt, not being a software developer, can still make these things without having to have installed a programmer's editor. Hugely important to me. I saw, Matt, that you got a tab character plugin. I'd love to see that. That's again such a nice example because it's so small and therefore that makes an
Right.
interesting thing for other people to analyze and copy. Can you share us? Oh man, maybe you're frozen. Eric, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I think we might have a freeze on Matt. Eric, I didn't give you, having got distracted by all the things that Matt showed while we wait for Matt to unfreeze, didn't give you a chance to introduce yourself. But welcome, Eric Schulman, a venerable and venerated member of the community. Thank you for joining us, Eric.
Oh, my
And
pleasure.
This is
oh, you are back.
actually Mario. Mario
Yeah, Matt's
is
having
the
some
man
bandwidth dropouts.
behind this, and it's. Am I frozen? Oh,
You
okay.
did freeze. How are you doing now? I think we might be getting your video is poor. Maybe you should stop the video camera if that's an option you can figure out. Okay, that stopped the screen share. I've got that. Matt, are you still with us? Eric, you can move, can't you? Yeah. We've got real time Eric and Matt, who is a few thousand miles closer to me, is frozen like he's on
Can you hear
Mars.
me?
Oh, yes, yeah, you came through.
Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me? I think the lag is poor. Okay.
Okay, well, Matt
Matt
just
is hopefully
disappeared.
gonna
Yeah,
figure out a
hopefully he'll
way
be
to
right
improve
back.
things.
Yeah,
But yes, Eric, welcome. And you were
indeed.
uh, you were telling me earlier what you were excited about that you're working on at the moment. I wonder if that would be a good thing to get you to share. A bit of background for everybody else is that when Eric and I chat, which we do on a fairly regular basis, one of the regular features is Eric proudly showing me his newest stuff. Then one, two, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. And Matt's back as well. Matt, how's your lag? Okay, seems like you're back and operational.
I don't hear
Lynn,
him.
oh no, I can't hear you, Matt. Oh, because I need to unmute you. Okay,
Oh,
Matt, you're unmuted. How's that? I'm just going to
can you hear me now?
unmute Lynn one two as well. Lynn
Okay.
one two. I'm going to say hello.
Hello.
I'm going to mute you again while you finish your sandwich, and then I'm going to come back to I'm going to come back to you if you can hold on for a couple of minutes. Once Matt's finished his demo.
All right, I'm going to save a little bandwidth here and hide my camera.
Yeah, and Eric, I'll come back to you again before the end. But while we've got the other
Indeed.
guests, we'll get the best out of them. Matt, did you have more to show us?
Yes, I do actually. I have a lot more. The reason why I froze is probably because I opened another tab with my boosters plugin. What I could do if you have more guests, I could read up my little list of plugins that I could potentially use the ones that I considered useful for this occasion, and maybe you or others can say which ones they would prefer to see. Is that a good idea?
That makes good sense. So if you drop off, Lin 1-2's you've turned your camera off, but I'm going to unmute Lin 1-2. Matt and indeed, if you drop off, we'll see you on the chat and get some feedback from the chat, and we'll welcome you back in a few minutes.
Me,
If that's
me,
okay.
right?
Sorry?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
You
no,
were
that's
talking to me when you said that.
absolutely, Matt. Sorry, that was for you. That drop off and get some feedback in the chat, and then when Lin 1-2 and I have finished, we'll welcome you back.
Sure.
But just
Excellent.
pop
Excellent.
into the room when you're done. Brilliant, thank you. So great opportunity to welcome Lin 1-2. That's how I know you. But please, would you introduce yourself to everybody? Tell us a little bit about where you are in the world and as much about who you are as you'd like to. Everybody would like to know your involvement in TiddlyWiki as well.
Yeah, hope you can hear me well. I recently eat too much spicy food, so my tongue hurt a bit, so difficult to pronounce clearly. Hope that doesn't matter. Well, I'm from China, and I can share the QQ group later. We have nearly 1,000 of TiddlyWiki users. I think most of them are recruited by me because after I using TiddlyWiki, I read some article to introduce the work I've done. Let me share my screen so you know what I have done. Let me see the screen 2, the screen 1.
Brilliant.
Okay. Yeah, this is TiG, my Node.js based TiddlyWiki. I use it like I use Notion before. I really like the style. I mean the CSS, the UI style of Notion. So I try my best to make TiddlyWiki looks like it, to make it much friendly to people that used to Notion. And I found one thing I really like in modern TiddlyWiki is the layout. You can see I use a lot of layouts, alternative layouts every day. Oh, let me switch the language.
Please, Lin 1-2, that is an area I'd love you to return to and just show us what happens when you click some of those links. I'm also just your screen's gone.
Let me share the only share the TiG.
There we go. Great. So Lin 1-2 here is using his own custom desktop application called TiddG, which integrates TiddlyWiki into an easy-to-use application, very much along the lines of Tiddly Desktop, much more ambitious than Tiddly Desktop. And what Lin 1-2 is showing us here, this layout switcher, this is a feature. TiddlyWiki has the ability to have multiple layouts and to switch between them, but Lin 1-2 is the first person I know who's really gone to town on that with a whole bunch of different layouts. So show us what they are and what they're for.
Yeah, I really use much. On daily use, I use iMessage layout a lot because when I'm outside, I'm using TiG mobile app, so I can record my source very quickly, new source, and just publish it. Well, it just become a new card, and you can open it in the standard layout by clicking this icon. We just recently add this icon to represent the concept of layout. So you can see this button also means go back to standard layout, and this also means open this on standard layout, and then you can edit it with what you see is what you get editor. Oh, it just auto do the git push to the GitHub. So you may know TiddlyWiki is short for TiddlyWiki. It's a combination of TiddlyWiki and GitHub, mostly GitHub. We will auto backup my nodes to GitHub every 30 minutes. Yeah. So when I do some edit here, we'll see what you get editor. And we can see it will show what change in the source control management, which means Git. I have this new node in the Git in this staging area, means it's ready to be commit. I can click sync to cloud. There's an option sync to cloud. It will auto do git commit, git push to GitHub. So everything in this wiki will be published to my public blog. So that's why I'm very concerned about the multi-wiki server that can split my public node and private node, because now I use file system test to put most of my nodes to the public wiki, but some private node and my calendar node to some other private GitHub repos, so they won't be seen by other people, but they are still all in one in the same wiki, and I can search them with a single OMI search.
Okay, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but and please don't stop screen sharing. There's a lot more that I would like us to show you, like you to show us if you've got the patience. But I wanted to step back and highlight what I think is so exciting for me about the things that you're showing. So the first thing is, and I touched on this in one of the earlier Hangouts, is that it's profoundly reassuring that TiddlyWiki enjoys popularity in China, because that means that I can be confident that I haven't accidentally made something that's a phenomenon of English language, English way of writing, English way of thinking. So I really love that, and it's a huge delight to me to see your TiddlyWiki with Chinese writing all over it. It's incredible that it's completely alien to me, and yet also deeply familiar. And of course, Lim12 is the view that I have into this Chinese community, and Lim12 has indeed been instrumental in growing that community. But the other thing I wanted to draw attention to was we saw Matt earlier, who's not a software developer. Lim12, I think your background does include software development, and but it's so interesting how you have the same experience, though, that Matt, is building his own plugins and other people's plugins in Wikitext to customize the user experience. You then want to integrating TiddlyWiki at a really deep level with the other software systems that you use. So by making it into a desktop application, you've integrated it into your desktop, you've integrated it into the Git environment that you use. So I really love that the two of you on the call together are like two extremes, or two ends of the spectrum of how the same TiddlyWiki can serve the needs of a very different community. People who have experience of software development, people with no experience of software development, but it serves their needs in the same way by giving you the tools you need to make your own customizations. So forgive that interruption, but it was to highlight my appreciation of what you're showing us. As well as seeing these layouts and the switching between them, this Lim12 would be a great opportunity for you to also show us the community plugin library. I think there'll be many people who haven't seen that. So feel free to take as much time as you need on that. Matt, I'm going to take your screen share off whilst. Oh, I don't think I can do that. No, I can't. But I can't actually remove Matt's stream. But I think if you screen share to Lim12, Matt, I may. It may be that you should drop off and come back, if that's okay. Oh, great, Matt's. That's insane. Matt has very kindly turned the stream off, but it's still great. We're back. Thank you, Lim12. Thank you, and thank you everybody for your patience. Much appreciated. So, talk us through what you're doing now, Lim12.
So you want me to show the plugin library?
Yes, I would very much like. I think everybody would love to see that.
Yeah. Okay. Let me first show you in my wiki. There is an alternative layout for the CTL. You see the T.5 Central plugin library. Well, it first means a Chinese plugin library, but well, I hope it can be also used by other people.
Yeah.
It's an alternative layout, so it's very wide and no other turbulence. Well, we can search for everything here, like layout. You can see there is a simple layout launcher created by me, and other iMessage layout I showed before. This layout, iMessage layout, and we can update them by simply click the fetch update. You can see the Tiddly flex by Burning Tree. See, it just updated, and I can receive the update by notification. Simply click update. We reuse a lot of TiddlyWiki core features. So here is installed, and I usually let me share my desktop. So I usually open the GitHub desktop so I can see here it is updated and it is in the Git staging area, and I can revert to any version by clicking the reset to commit or revert commit in this revert change in this commit if that plugin update breaks my wiki. So this is a good a benefit of using Node.js wiki, because everything is a single tiddler on the on the folder. You can see everything is in the tiddler, and they can be easily found by the GitHub desktop by the Git. So if I don't like this update, I simply select them and click discard changes, and they will be discarded. And I may come back and restart my wiki, so that update will be reverted. This I think this is very visual. You can see everything changes, and even inside the wiki, I have this SDM source control management to see what happened. So it made me feel I'm in control of my data, and I know there won't be any permanent damage to my wiki because I can see them and easily revert them, discard them. So well, this is the first reason I created TiddlyGit, because I found the single file wiki will produce a very huge diff change in the Git change list. Well, that annoyed me for the first 2 years. I used the single file wiki for first 2 years, and after I want to make more control on the changes on the history, I switched to Node.js wiki, and I found Node.js wiki is very difficult to use. Even I am a professional programmer, So I create a shell, create an application, that's called application. So even for me, it's more easier to use Node.js wiki. Well, you want me?
Terrific to see. I'm still be interested in showing people more of the plugin library. You showed
Yes,
us the
let me show the
CPL
plugin
being
library.
yeah, great.
This is the editor wiki of CPL. Well, you can see the recent updated plugins, my autocomplete plugin. That is the dependent of the command plate plugin. Let me also show the command plate plugin.
For those that don't know, which plugin is providing that search bar, the quick search?
Oh, search bar is just a command plate.
It looks great, and
yeah.
it's inspiring to see how quickly you can navigate with it.
Yeah, each plugin in the CPL is just a tiddler with some constant file, like the URL is where it can be downloaded. So I always recommend people to have a constant URL like this. The GitHub release latest always point to latest plugin, so CPL can crowd it every half an hour, auto discover latest plugin. Yeah, and we can put some description icon and some metadata like the source code and the documentation here. Oh, let me switch the language to English.
Well, it's great to see, and I really like the way that you've implemented it. The fact that, like the core plugin library, that you can pull in the plugin library data as tiddlers, to display it within the wiki that you're in. Really like that, and I like the presentation. I mean, this looks great. If only it was easy to get people to to create images for things. I mean, you notice that with TiddlyWiki plugins that very few authors, well, not very few, but it's a big barrier for people to create a custom icon for their plugin as well.
I think there's there's a meta plugin. I forget its name. But you can create new plugin inside a single HTML wiki. Yeah, it's created by.
I do think actually that the core really needs better support for plugins, by which I mean when you edit a plugin, you should get a list of tiddlers that are in that plugin, and you should be able to drag and drop tiddlers in and out of it.
Yeah. The CPL also support downloading plugin from single HTML wiki. I can't find the example. I can't find an example here. Maybe this one. Well, let KOKMA Kukma create a plugin. I forgot his name, but he can create new plugin inside HTML wiki.
That's right.
Yeah. And if somebody creates a plugin and put it on Tiddly host like that, or like this one, Tiddly map, or index or HTML, you can simply put the HTML wiki URL here, and you will download, you will extract the plugin with its title from its HTML. So it also supports non-technical people to create plugin and share it here.
Okay. No, that's great to see, and I think you elegantly tackled, the issues that we've always wondered about with setting up something like this, and it is, of course, something I would like very much to be adopted by the core, and I believe you've got features like comments and star ratings in the CPL.
I'm not the original author of CPL. It was written by Todd, I think. see.
Yes.
He's also the creator of Enhance. Yeah. Columnar Fry Enhancer. Oh, he also named GK0WK. Well, because his Chinese name is started by WK. So he created this, but he's busy in doing other things. So I recently take up the maintenance of CPU.
I see. Well, one thing that certainly characterizes the TiddlyWiki community is that we often see people spend lots of time in the community, and then they're away for a while, and then they'll come back. Well, in some cases they come back. I think Simon Burning Tree C, who was here on the first hangout, would be an example of that. Sorry, Lin 1-2. What are you showing us now? Though back to the command palette. Yeah, I really like the command palette.
Yeah. Oh, I'm trying to say that command palette is a success. I mean, it's a continual work of SOC 21's TW command palette. I took his wiki text part and combined with some other JS plugin, JS dependencies to create this new command palette. So this is what you said about take up people that is temporarily leaving and continue his work.
I see.
Yeah. Oh, and that is why I recently create plugin more using wiki text, because it's more easier for other people to pick up. I'm trying to reduce the JS part of my plugins. So like the
I'm really pleased that you mentioned that. And a bit of background for everybody else that Lin 1-2 mentioned background as a programmer. In particular, he works with JavaScript and TypeScript, and so that means for Lin 1-2, when he looks at TiddlyWiki, it's really easy to jump in, and he can look at any part of the source code. I imagine this would be fair to say, Lin 1-2, that you could understand any part of the source code that you needed to make changes to. And indeed, I think some of your early contributions were some of the really interesting ones actually were where you'd taken some existing JavaScript components and grafted them into TiddlyWiki. And what I've seen over the last few months is indeed you being much more focused on Wikitext solutions. So I think rather in the same way as I mentioned, watching Tones learn the new stuff and Matt learn the new stuff, it's been quite interesting watching you learn Wikitext and filters, given your deep experience of similar technologies.
Yeah.
But how comfortable do you feel with Wikitext?
When I first met Wiki, I think it is 2018. Well, I feel Wikitext is very difficult, and the filter is very complex. Well, but also I don't know much of SQL. SQL is also difficult for me. I only comfortable writing real JavaScript, and I found it become easier since I started writing plugins. I think, yeah, it forced me to know more syntax and reading the Wikitext in the core. Well, I think reading the Wikitext in the core plugin is the way I learn Wikitext. I'm not really learning things from the official website. I think many people also talk about this. Our official website don't have much example to help learning.
That's and that's something that I'm glad we've been able to make some improvements. But yeah, plenty more space to make things better. That's really interesting. Matt, you're here now. Would you like to turn your camera on, and we'll bring you into the discussion too. I think what I'd like to do next is we'll have Matt's got some feedback on the group now, and sorry, from the live chat, and it's just going to continue showing us a couple of plugins. Thank you, Matt. Please take over. Ooh. Matt, I'd muted you. Matt, can you hear me? Hmm. Perhaps I do that. That. Matt, can you hear me now? I think we've got Matt's screen share, but not Matt's audio. Um, so Matt, you probably can't hear me necessarily. Um, uh, yeah, there are bits of the system that I think I don't fully understand. Eric, are you still with us?
I am indeed still with you.
Matt, we've not got audio from you, and I think I can see Lim12 is still here, but is muted and camera off. But I was hoping to pass over to Matt. Let's Lim12. Is, and have you got anything else that you'd like to show us, or anything that you would like to discuss or raise? This is a good opportunity. Might not be able to deal with everything, but if there's anything on your mind, let me know.
Oh, maybe I can share my wiki. Yeah, let me.
Great.
I mean, share more layouts. Like you can see. Oh, this wiki. Let me switch to. Hey, which one? Oh, let me use this wiki. Well, there's a CPL layout and there's also a whiteboard layout. You can see it is simply a whiteboard widget embedded in a Tiddler tag with the layout core tag. And we can create a new Tiddler.
And does the whiteboard, does it save the data within the tiddler?
Yes. So I say new Tiddler here. It really just simply a Tiddler. Let me go back to a standard layout or open Tiddler in standard layout, and you can see its content.
See.
Can we see its content? Oh, it's also looks like this in edit mode, but we can see in the Git. Let me share the Git. So we can see what's inside of it. Oh, there's so much things. Maybe we can open it in the folder. Here is a Tiddler with a meta, and we can also open it with VS Code, so it's easier to see VS Code.
Oh yeah.
So maybe it's here. We just created TLDR with some TiddlyWiki metadata like modifier created type. Type is application BND TLDR JSON. So it's a JSON inside of it. Everybody is rendering as a whiteboard. Maybe I can find just commit things and I do some modification to it. Now we can see its content. Well, it's just a huge JSON.
Yeah.
Represent everything at XY coordinate.
Well, it's again one of the things I really feel went well with TiddlyWiki 5. The original TiddlyWiki Classic, a tiddler was just a block of text. And we did start storing images as base 64 tiddlers, but it was very much text-based. And in TiddlyWiki 5, there's this idea of content types, which means that a tiddler's content can be anything, including binary content, and the type determines how it is rendered. And what Lim12's just been showing us there with the whiteboard plugin is a great example of that, where a tiddler that actually contains a big blob of JSON gets its own custom editor that in this case appears as a whiteboard editor. So it's a great example of TiddlyWiki's architecture. It's also in terms of as a contribution to the community. It's something that I really love, which is that it combines an existing open source library with TiddlyWiki, and that becomes like a multiplying factor because which library is it you're using here, Lim12?
Oh, it's TiddlyWiki. Also,
What it
MIT
was.
licensed whiteboard library. TiddlyWiki.
TL is a wonderful product and also a fascinating and inspiring team of people that work on it around the world. And it's great to see it working so well in TiddlyWiki.
Yeah, just
We
I also want to share the Wysiwyg editor is also a combination of TiddlyWiki and Slate.js. It's also an MIT licensed library. So I usually don't go to the draft state, but directly edit it in the build state with this editor. Please, Kenya, what do you want to say?
okay. Forgive me. Oh wait, we've lost Matt.
Yeah.
Lim12. The rich text editor, I think, is worth spending a bit of time on as well. I think that will be of interest to people.
Yeah, I want to use it to make a easier interface for some feature like the block level anchor, because if you have to type that specific syntax to create anchor, you may go to the another tiddler, set an anchor, and go back to current tiddler to add a link to anchor. But with Wysiwyg editor, you can just slash and search for that text, and anchor is auto created. And if you want to use create something like a wordware, a recent AI product, it embed the large language model prompt inside its editor, and AI will raise things and feed the things to an AI widget. I think that can also be easy. That can also make it easier to use by using Wysiwyg editor. Well, I don't know if I made it clear, but I think Wysiwyg editor can be an entry for many features, many widgets, just like the command plate is an entry for filters and tags and some search.
Wysiwyg editing is something I'd hoped to get into TiddlyWiki 5 from the beginning, or planned to. But back then, well, for a bunch of reasons I didn't. Could come back to this. But now, I love the way that you've been able to take an existing off-the-shelf rich text editor library and integrate it with TiddlyWiki. The challenge is that I would like the rich text editor component to also be able to handle widgets. So when I start typing angle brackets dollar, obviously I should get an autocomplete list of widgets, but when I select a widget, then I should get a kind of pop-up dialog that allows me to see all the attributes and set them. So that's my goal is to get to the point where the rich text editor isn't just editing, I was going to say plain text, isn't just editing pure text, but can also edit and create the dynamic elements that make TiddlyWiki so useful. You know, macro calls, for instance, just being able to type a macro call and sensible things happening. Tones is waving goodbye on account of being in a time zone where it's ridiculously late. I intend to draw things to a close within in the next sort of half hour or so. So Matt, let's. I can see your screen sharing, but I don't think we've got Matt the person. Um, have we got Matt the person? Um, while we're waiting, Eric, I'll come back to you because I'm pretty sure you're still there. Uh, we were talking earlier for filling in a similar AV gap, but I wonder if this is a good opportunity for you to do a quick share, Eric.
Oh, sure. I'd love to. All right. Let me juggle some windows here. Oh, actually, I'll leave that window there. And if I share this window here like this, you should be seeing Tiddly Tools.
Yep, just come up.
Okay, so I have so many things here I could show, but I figured I'd show something which I really haven't promoted very much of, um, but is, I think, a very sort of interesting um, bit of kit. Um, so I found myself wanting to be able to do what in the old paper and glue generation would have been called a Pasteup, which is a way of sort of combining a whole bunch of different visual elements in a single piece of paper. And, this was done for publishing, would do a Pasteup, and then that would be reproduced to create the layout. So what I have here is an example. Let me just close. I'm pointing my cursor at the wrong window here. There we go. Okay. I was looking at the screen share rather. That we can hear you now.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me just do this real quick, and then we can move on to Matt. So I have this this concept of a Pasteup, and if we just real quick go over to my sample Pasteup, you can see this is what a Pasteup looks like. And you can see it has a number of elements and they're overlapping. And so this is a much more of a graphical way of formatting Tiddler content. And if I unlock this Pasteup, I'm again clicking on the wrong window. Here we go. If I unlock that Pasteup, it gives you an overlaid grid on top of the content. And if I were to then go into mouse over any particular element, you can see it gets these grab handles in the corners, and it gets a dotted outline. And if we open up the list here, we can see that a Pasteup is essentially a tiddler. And let me unlock my tiddlers here because I have a read-only lock on my document, but let me unlock them. And if I edit this tiddler, what we can see is that it, in fact, is a tiddler that's tagged as Pasteup. And then it has some um, JSON configuration settings for it. And then it has scrolling here. And then it has a number of fields, and these are just the fields of the Pasteup with the various content that they contain. And so this is what a Pasteup tiddler looks like internally. And if I close it up, we can see this is what a Pasteup tiddler looks like when you're working with it. Now there's a by virtue of it being tagged as Pasteup, it gets a custom view template, which is what's giving you this presentation here, where it has the list of fields with their values, and then these grid coordinates for each field is laid out on this grid in some position here. And so we have top left, bottom right, and layer, Z index, if you will. And so I can basically go here and I can say, well, let's take a look at this picture of Jeremy here. And if I click on it, it will give me a editing dialog where it says, well, the name of the field is Jeremy. That's the actual field name in the tiddler. And this is the field value in the tiddler, which is just transcluding a JPEG I have of Jeremy. And then there's a layout, which again is top left, bottom right, and layer. In this case, it's on layer 3. And then whatever CSS I want to apply, which in this case is I'm rotating it 15 degrees. I'm scaling it to 3/4 size. I'm adding a padding, a border radius, and other little features, which creates it looking like this little, sort of like a photo slide. And so there it is. But then I can go here, and if I just go here, I can say, you know what, let me take this guy here, and if I just move him, drag him, and drop him right over here, I've just moved it. And you can see they're overlapping elements. You can see one of these is the about one is this actual, it's actually transcluding an entire tiddler content. But then we also have, as you can see, this layout here. And if I grab by a corner, I can resize it, and it will slowly, well, maybe it didn't work here. Let me grab it and drop the corner. There we go. And so you can resize elements just by dragging their corners. You can, of course, move elements just by dragging them and moving them around. I can also take an element here. Let's say, so we're talking about the Jeremy element here, and you can see that it has these. Oh, sorry about that. We have these coordinates here, and it's on layer 3. But if I were to say, let's move that, we'll say send it to the back, and so now it's layered, and so so basically this allows you to take elements and place them on a tiddler with positioning and sizing and layering, Z order layering. And as you can see from the table here, that the values that are contained in this table of fields here, it can be transclusions, it can be plain text, it can be macros, it can be HTML. So you can basically composite together any visual elements you'd like. And as an example here, suppose I were to go over to TiddlyWiki.com, and what I've done here is I just grabbed from Tiddly Tools, I just grabbed Tiddly Tools Pasteup and Tiddly Tools Pasteup View. Pasteup contains all of the, and by the way, this is implemented as wiki text, so there's no JavaScript involved. Other than the core, of course. So I grabbed the Pasteup and the view, which is the custom view template that is providing this interface, and I dragged those over to TiddlyWiki. And as you can see here, and let me actually start this again here. Let me actually delete, and let me click on the right window. Okay. I'm going to delete this tiddler. So you can see I've just imported these two into TiddlyWiki.com. And if I create a new tiddler and give it a tag of Pasteup, and that's all I need to do, and I just say OK, and lo and behold, there it is as a Pasteup grid ready to be edited. And of course, you can lock it or unlock it, so you can edit it or have it for viewing only. And so I can go in and select and drag through and create a selection. And then I can click on that selection and it gives me a pop-up modal. And in this modal, I can say, well, what's going to call this Jack? And the value is just going to be a transclusion of the motivonjack.jpg. And it gives you a little preview. And of course, because I had already made a selection, it has coordinates for the rectangle for where it should be placed. And maybe I want to go and do something like put a border, let me type that correctly, border 2 pixels solid red. And so it adds a red border. And if I just hit the my mouse cursor, here we go, save, we can see there it is now. Motivon Jack has been dropped in. And I can move my mouse over it, and you can see it gets the grab handles in the corners. I can take a grab handle and drag it and drop it, and you can see now it's actually, and the image will be scaled to fit whatever rectangle you've given it. Obviously, this rectangle is taller than it needs for the width of the image, so I could drag that up here a bit and let go of it, and that's a little bit better there. And then I can take that and I can also I can click on it again to bring up and edit it. Or if I want to, I can actually just view those settings right here in the table view where it has the coordinates, and I can actually go to these numbers and change them manually, or I can type in some more styles here. But let's just do it through the modal dialog, and I can add something to this like uh, transform, rotate, uh, um, 25 degrees. Did I get that correct? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I don't think I did, because that's obviously not the correct CSS for it. Let me refresh my memory here by looking at what I've done for, say, the Jeremy picture here. And it's transform, rotate. Oh, it's DEG. Okay, so if we pop back over here and I pop back into here and it's transform, rotate. Oh, I said 25%. Well, that's clearly not correct, is it? So if I go in here and I type DEG, there we go. So now I've added some, and this is just standard CSS styling here. And I've said rotate it by 25 degrees, and I hit the save button, and there it is rotated. Now, obviously, when it's rotated, the corners no longer fit. So I would want to stretch that a little bit bigger.
Eric, I think you've made The Sims in TiddlyWiki. You've made The Sims in TiddlyWiki.
Oh, perhaps. But as you can see from this demo here on Tiddly Tools, that you can actually create multiple fields. The fields can have interesting values to them, like transclusions or even tables. So, for example, and I think it's just a question that we don't get to see quite. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I have a table here which is doing some, it's a combination of HTML and some wiki text that says, show me these various fields of a tiddler. And so here it is rendered as a table with all the values being displayed. So this allows you to, like I said, there's a sort of an old school way of doing presentation compositing, which was called Pasteup, where you would literally take pieces of paper and cut them out and then glue them onto a gridded layout sheet, and then you would take that to your printer, to your printing service, and they would do some photo reproduction of the paste up, and then produce a big stack of multiple copies of it for creating flyers and ads and things of that sort. But the nice thing here is that it does allow you to do this sort of grid-based layout of Tiddler content. And of course, if I lock this Tiddler up and hide that little info thing here, this is what the Tiddler looks like when you're just viewing it. And there's a couple extra features to it here. I can open it in a separate window, which won't show up in my screen share. I can hit print, which will actually open up another window as a print preview. I can even scale it down or scale it up. And so this basically gives you a free-form layout for things. So that's one thing I wanted to show.
Okay,
And
Eric, we should. Matt has been so patient as well. We should
indeed,
let Matt
indeed. So
join us.
let me stop my sharing. Where's my cursor?
I might just
Stop
note
my
while
sharing.
Matt is arranging his screen, great feedback in the chat for what Eric just showed, and I think it's a tour de force of what can be achieved with pure wiki text. The fact that it's sort of so draggy, droppy, and graphical, really amazing piece of work. So thank you for sharing that with us, Eric. Matt, do please. I think I might need to unmute somebody.
Can you hear me?
No, I can
I'm
hear you.
here.
Yes.
Great,
I'm here.
great.
You can hear me, and you can also see everything.
Yeah.
The shared reason sys. Okay, great. First of all, thank you, Eric. That's a really interesting thing. I'm really interested in that, so I'll get back to you on that. So everyone, this is recent sys. Someone requested for me to show it. I mistakenly wrote recent syst, but it's recent syst. Yeah, and it's really not much to it. There is a small button here, and if you click it, you see the system tiddlers also, which you don't usually see otherwise. And that's basically it. Sometimes that's really useful. I was really frustrated that it's so difficult to find system tiddlers. And the advantage of having it in the recent tab is that, well, it shows the ones that you were just editing. For example, state tiddlers. You do something, you do some setting or something, and they disappear, and you don't really know their name or anything. But thanks to this little button here, you can see them. So that's recent sys. Yep. So I'll show you another page, and it should work like this. Are you now seeing the boosters page?
Yes.
Boosters. Yes. Okay. So this one is actually has a lot more complexity to it, but I think it's pretty cool. It's more or less purely CSS based, and it's small functional features, I guess, to control the layout of the wiki. And I've divided them up into sidebar features, sidebar boosters, edit view boosters, Tiddler view boosters, and control panel boosters. So let me start perhaps with the edit view boosters. So if you go into an edit Tiddler, you can see that we all recognize this thing, but there are some tidbits that are a bit different. For example, we have the add buttons. Okay, they're not showing right now. So the tags area. Here, if I can toggle the tags area to show in a more streamlined way, I'm doing that now. And when this is showing, the add buttons can toggle to show as a little plus sign instead. Nothing big there. One thing that is more interesting perhaps is the type feature that you can see up here. I wanted this the whole display of the edit view to be much cleaner. I think it's a bit, to be honest, a bit scary now, especially for newcomers. I would at least be scared with all the fields, the custom fields. So instead, I hid a lot of things. One of them is the type areas. But if you do want to another type, you just click there and you can set it to the Wiki Classic type or whatever you want. So it's just relocated really, and you can have it. You can, yeah. And if you're not hovering on it, and if you didn't set a certain type, then it just disappears, and it only shows us that small indicator there. The custom fields, you access them by hovering. I know that some people don't like hovering because it's not possible on mobile phones, etc. But I think these features are not really made for setting in. My reasoning is this: that you do your actual Tiddly work when you set up a wiki. You do that where you have a bigger screen, but then you use the wiki perhaps on a phone or something like that when you don't really do the settings as much. So in my use, it's appropriate to have these features by means of hovering. So you hover here to get the custom fields area, and it functions as you would expect. At least that's I think you expect. Yeah, so that's the edit view.
Matt,
Yes.
I noticed that your custom fields, the field name has a drop list.
Yes.
Okay, so you can select it from existing field names, but then I notice on field value there's a plus.
Yeah, right, and that is the here. If I remove the add buttons, there is the
Oh,
normal
okay.
add button.
It's the add button with a different
It's the add
look.
button. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And the type position here, it's I can if you look over here, you can see where I'm pointing right now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I can relocate that to, if I want it somewhere else, I can position it somewhere else also. So if I, for example, position it up there, it's up here now. But why would I want that? So I'll just put it back to where it belongs. Yeah, so that was the edit view. There are also some features for the view, the view mode. For example, if I want a description, if there is a description field, this will show it. Now, where would I find a tiddler with a description field? Okay, let's create one. Description. I add it and I go here, and you see this. This shows up here because I have this description toggle to show, and it's useful sometimes. It's just a little. I prefer to have it that way. Sticky shade. That is if you use sticky titles, as is done here, you get this little shaded area below the title. Which makes it obvious that it actually is a sticky title. Otherwise, if you have, say, I'll just put this tiddler above this one, so that I can, if you have it like this and you don't have this shade, this is using sticky titles, which is a native setting in TiddlyWiki. But if you don't have this shade here, you don't really understand that that there is more content hiding beneath the about title there. So that is one little detail. So there are several of these small like tidbits for functionality. The things I'm perhaps most excited about is the control panel settings. So you have these various settings, and I'll show you. Here is the settings list. This might not look familiar to you because it usually doesn't look like this under settings TiddlyWiki. Instead, it usually looks like this, a very spread out and, in my opinion, hard to overview list of features. So with this compact setting, you just click it and you still get this. And how do you actually access things? Well, you hover over them again and you get the same controls. And if there's something changed from standard, like here, I've set this, then you get this little check mark over here. What else? There are several of these. Yeah, I call them functional. I call it functional styling because they affect how you use the things. It's not just for looks.
Yeah.
So if anyone is curious about that, it's on boosters.tiddlyhost.com. Yeah. Oh yeah, maybe I should show also this part here. Oh yeah, this is a cool thing also. In the recent tab here, these black dots, they show what is open. So the about is open, the about tiddler, and the new tiddler that I just created up here is also open. And I also have this, as you can see, it's turning blue. But when I hover a tiddler here, it gets a blue frame. And vice versa, if I hover here on the tiddler in the sidebar, the recent tab is highlighted. So is that visible on your screens?
Yes,
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So it's just easier to find things. I have a lot of tiddlers open often, and sometimes I'm not really sure where I'm at, and I can more easily locate some things if they're shown in this way. So that's the recent bullets and the river ... sidebar. That's the connection, like linking those two by frames and colors. Yeah, so there are several of these small things. Yes, Eric.
Yes, I just want to say often I've found that sometimes it is some very what might appear to be simple but highly effective tweaks to the interface that address sort of the experience of usability that people have had that were perhaps not anticipated in the functional. We created, there was an interface that was built and it has certain functions to it, but that people find, for example, the highlighting of the tiddler corresponding to the title that you're hovering over. That sort of a thing is a really good visual cue that, while it seems like a very simple thing, it definitely gives a lot of enhancement to the effectiveness of the interface.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks.
So
I agree
bravo.
with that. What's nice also here is that the actual plugin is just an empty shell. And all these various boosters, as I call them, for lack of a better name, are separate style sheets. So for example, if I take this one that you just commented on, Eric, this is the style sheet tiddler for that. So it's a separate little style sheet, and you don't have to, if you don't like this particular one, then just don't get it. The booster plugin itself it's this tab here, and it lists the individual boosters. So you can. My suggestion, if anyone is curious about this, is that you install all of them and then just remove the ones that you don't like. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Yeah, so those that's pretty much what was asked for.
Matt, thank you.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
really appreciate it, and
Yeah,
thank you for your patience with scheduling the other guests as well. I'm
no,
very, very
no.
grateful that you were able to make time and stay. It's not easy. It's a bit frustrating being in the green room waiting for your chance. But I can see the feedback on the chat. People are really delighted to see your stuff, and it's of course great pleasure to see you uh, uh, talking about it yourself as well. So Matt, thank you. Eric, I'm going to say thank
Yes.
you as well. I'm going to close in a
All right.
minute or two.
I'd
Um,
I'd like to
Please
make
do.
a short advertisement announcement, whatever you want to call it. Um, uh, After the last couple of sessions, I thought it might be interesting to have some regular live interaction experiences provided for TiddlyWiki community. And I experimented with using the TiddlyWiki Discord server, which has, screen sharing and live video and audio. So that, for example, what I'm hoping is that if we can work out sort of a smooth usage and instructions for people who might not be otherwise familiar with Discord, that I might start hosting, say, once or twice a week on a regularly scheduled basis, sort of a live. Sort of office hours, we might call them, where people can stop in and get live, immediate help with whatever it is they're working
Mm,
on with TiddlyWiki. Um, I've found that sometimes when working with the TiddlyWiki talk uh, um, um, discourse server, that it sometimes takes quite a bit of time for people to explain their problem, and then someone says, well, what did you mean by that, and can you give us an example and some sample code, and it goes, and it can take sometimes
yeah,
days
yeah,
in order to get down to the point where
yeah.
someone says, well, you have an extra curly bracket there. And there's kind of things that could be perhaps resolved much more quickly in a live interactive environment. So um, I will make another posting to talk about my experiments with the Discord server. And I did have a couple of people stop by the other day, but it seems as if getting started with Discord is a little bit of a bumpy ride for some people. And so if we can work that out, we can get sort of regular attendance
Yeah.
and provide that as another avenue of assistance to people.
And a very welcome advert, Eric. Thank you. I am on Discord and do sometimes look at the TiddlyWiki community there. It's great to see. I'm on a number of other Discords too for various things. So interesting new environment for people. Eric, Matt, I shall thank you both very much. I'll speak in a moment about next sessions, but let's wave goodbye to you and thank you both very much again for joining. Cheers. Bye bye. Um, and so today was the last um, of the live streams that I've scheduled, but I am hoping to do three more this week, which I will announce in the forum. And obviously, it's only worth doing that because you're here with me. So again, to say how much I appreciate everybody's time and attention. I hope these sessions are useful. Do please give feedback both, well, at this point, probably not in the live chat. Feedback on the forum probably is the most helpful thing. But just remains for me to reiterate those thanks and look forward to seeing you on the next live stream.